Well, good afternoon. Today we're going to talk about Seachem's product. We do a lot of different types of reefing. We may have a mixed reef, we may have fish only, we may have only corals, we may be into softies, who knows, maybe just inverts if that's what you like to do. I have a friend that has a jellyfish tank, very cool, he likes jellyfish. So today we're going to talk about using Seachem's products for our reefing needs, for our aquarium needs. They have a whole line of products. Let me turn on their display here. A whole line of products for saltwater aquariums. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with basically a glass empty tank, and we're going to start from the very beginning. We're going to add water, everything we need to do, and then decide what course we're going to take when we start adding livestock in it. So let's go ahead and turn on our second display here and take a look at this. We're going to start with this product called Matrix. Matrix, let me bring it over to the other picture of it, is a biomedia filtration system. And what it is it's the biofiltration system that's going to go inside of our filter, and it builds up nitrifying bacteria within the substrate of this product so that it could seed, it could grow, colonize, and then expand out into the tank and help keep the tank nice and clean of different types of ammonia. Again, if you take a look at the substrate itself, it's a very porous rock. And it's permanently in the tank, you don't have to change it. And we're gonna, if we need to, take it out once every 6 months and give it a nice rinse in RODI water, nice clean water, make sure it's all clean again and put it right back in. Because the nitrifying bacteria seeds deep inside of the rock, so it won't wash out, so you won't kill the nitrifying bacteria. Don't clean it in sink water or tap water. We're gonna use either water that's been treated by Safe, that's a nice Seachem product that treats tap water. And they also have a liquid version of it called Prime. Safe is a powder. I use it because a little bit goes a long way. It's highly concentrated. In fact, I use this when I'm cleaning my filter socks in my reef tank back here. And I want to get them, I use chlorine. It's actually a really heavy bleach to clean them nice. And then I soak them in Safe for probably about an hour before I dry them and put them back in use. So it's a nice product to use. Now, Matrix itself, again, is our biomedia. That's what we're going to start with. As soon as we're ready to buy a tank, we're going to buy this Matrix right off the bat, and we're going to give it to somebody that has a seasoned tank, that's matured, that's growing nicely, that's healthy, and we're going to let the Matrix get fortified with nitrifying bacteria. And while it's in their tank, it's going to get colonized with these good bacteria, and then we're going to move it into our tank so we could kind of jumpstart the process. You may even want to give it to the fish store owner that you bought the Matrix at. Again, it's a good product, and that's where everything is going to start. What we're doing today is with a good biofiltration system, a natural way of keeping that water nice and clean and pure. Now, you also want to start out with good water. So the recommendation is always to use an RODI system. And it's a four-part system, a four-steps filter system, and you can get it at Amazon pretty cheap. Under 70 bucks, you can buy the whole system to plug right in and it's ready to go. We're going to have links at the bottom of this video so you could have quick links going right into Amazon to buy this. Also to Seachem's product. Seachem has an Amazon store, so when you're buying through these links, you're buying directly from Seachem. You're not buying it from a third-party seller, somebody that may have bought out another pet store. They're trying to liquidate stuff that's expiring, that's been on the shelf for too long. It's a good product. Buy directly from Seachem when you can, or your local fish store if you have that option available to you. So we want to start with good clean water, either RODI water or water that we've treated with Safe or with Prime. Of course, the liquid version is Safe, so that there's no chlorine, no ammonia, none of that poison in it that's going to hurt our tanks and impede the growth of our corals or our softies. So once we have the RODI system, we have the tank that we chose to, we're going to fill that tank up with water that's been treated, and then we're going to go ahead and add our salt. Now when we go up here, Seachem has this wonderful product called Vibrant Sea, and it's a great sea salt. It's actually a synthetic sea salt. It replicates ocean waters, and it's enhanced with potassium, with the alkalinity that you need, with the magnesium that you need, with the carbonate that you need. Calcium, look at the calcium levels in this. The calcium levels are about, they here 455, plenty of calcium. pH is stabilized at 8.4, alkalinity is great, 3 to 4. Magnesium 1350, potassium somewhere around 550, plenty there. So at the first, when we first set up a tank, there's always sort of an urgent need to start dosing calcium and magnesium, and you really don't need to. Until your corals, if you decide to put corals in there, start absorbing all this calcium, magnesium, and alkalinity, there's no really need to start dosing this too early. You're just going to spend money and end up dumping the water out, and your water changes. What you need to do is get used to good husbandry and doing your water changes every week, a 10% water change. And of course, the salt that we're using in Vibrant Salt is going to replace all this stuff. Our alkalinity, our calcium, magnesium, all that's going to be replaced by the salt. So Vibrancy is a good product. We have our water in there. We started adding our salt. We have it mixing up. We turned on our pump so everything is filtering really nice. And as soon as that water starts to clear, so the sea salt itself is no longer present, and that's quick with Vibrant. It actually absorbs very quickly, and it's not dirty. It doesn't leave the water cloudy. Usually within an hour or two, we can go ahead and add our substrate. Now, Seachem makes this wonderful substrate called Pearl Beach. And it's great for stabilizing your alkalinity and your calcium so that you're not in these swings, and we'll get into that later on when we start talking about dosing. It prevents your pH from going too low, and that's a problem I've heard a lot of people that first get into reefing. They get set up, and about 3 or 4 months into it, when they start adding corals, they notice that their pH with fish and corals start dropping off, and they start fighting to keep the pH up. Now, if you're set up correctly when you first set up your tank and you use enough aggregate like this Pearl Beach, you really won't have that much of a problem with it. In fact, there's an area down here below at Seachem's website that tells you exactly how much to use in your tank. I'd use at least 1 to 2 inches on whatever the dimensions your tank are to provide you plenty of pH buffering, especially later on when you start loading up your tank with fish and corals and that pH starts to drop. That could be a problem for you. Again, when you're looking at the substrate, if you look at the mineral composition of it, it provides also calcium, iron, magnesium. I mean, it provides everything, strontium, zinc, even the trace elements that you need as it breaks down in the water column. So it's good stuff to have. Make sure you use enough of it to match the bioload you're going to put in that tank so your pH stays stable, especially later on when you start loading it up with livestock. So once we get all this done, we have our Pearl Beach in, our substrate in, we got our salt in, we got the water circulating. We are going back to our friend who we gave that bottle of matrix to and got that back from them because now it's fortified with nitrifying bacteria. It's ready to go, and it's going to keep our tank healthy and clean. So we're going to add that to either maybe we have a filter in the back and an all-in-one, or we're going to put it down in our sump down beneath the tank. But we're going to go ahead and put that in service. And again, you don't need to throw that out. You may take it out every 6 months and give it a good rinse, put it back in, but it is a permanent static part of your tank, and you really don't have to change it at any time. Just keep it nice and clean. So we have our matrix in the tank, so our biofilter with nitrifying bacteria is now in the tank and is starting to seed all of this Pearl Beach. This is our aggregate at the bottom of the tank. It actually leaves and exits out. It doesn't abandon it. Of course, it stays fortified inside of that matrix, but it does spread out and it colonizes the rest of the tank with this nitrifying bacteria. It'll cover all the surface of this Pearl Beach. It'll cover the surface of any other rocks that you put in there. And it's going to do a great job of, again, absorbing the nitrates out of the water, absorbing bio-waste out of the water, eating it up, and keeping your tank clean. There's other processes that we're going to talk about in just a second that add to that also when we start adding fish. Now at this point in time, you're probably ready to add fish. It's been about 2 or 3 weeks. You're testing your water. There's no nitrite at all, no nitrite. Your nitrates may be between 10 and even up to 50 at this point in time, especially once you add the fish. So we want to keep those nitrates under control. We never want to see nitrite at all. So in order to keep it under control when we first add our first couple of fish to help season and mature the tank, we're going to use this product called denitrate. And denitrate is similar to matrix. As a matter of fact, it even looks something like matrix. Let's take a look at it. It's kind of that porous, rocky substance. However, this is not static, this is dynamic, and once it gets used up, we're going to take it out of the tank. And you can't reuse it. Once it's used up, we're going to throw it out and replace it. However, it's going to do a great job when we're going through that ugly stage. You know, when that hair algae starts growing, it's going to keep that to a minimum by keeping nitrates absorbed. It's going to keep the water low in nitrate so our fish and our inverts that we first put in there stay healthy. And it's going to help us to keep this first ugly stage under control for the first month or two when the tank is really getting established. It's a great product. Again, this might go into a filter sock and may just sit in your sump and maybe on one of the racks inside of your all-in-one in the filter system. But we're going to be prepared to throw it out when it's done. It'll last a couple of months. And as you're testing your water, when your nitrates start going up a little bit, it might be time to either change it. Maybe you need to use it again for another month or so and get some more. Or it might be time to add, something like carbon and replace it with a carbon product. And we're going to talk about that in just a second too. But this isn't permanent. It's only going to be used when our nitrates are really peaking out. And that's generally when you first put fish in the tank and you start feeding them. Now, the second thing that we're going to watch for is phosphate. This product is called PhosGuard. And PhosGuard is great because it's not a GFO. And again, we'll get into what that means in just a second. PhosGuard is a nice product. If you take a look at it, it's a small little pearly little beads, and it absorbs phosphate and silicate from your water. Now, if you're not using our RODI system, it's more than likely that you're going to get silicate in your water because it's in almost all well water, all city water. And although these products do a good job of taking some of the or the ammonia and the chlorine out, it does not take silicate out. And it doesn't take mostly phosphate out either. So using this is going to do a good job of preventing those phosphates from building up that are going to cause hair bacteria to grow. That green algae, you can't stand it, hair algae, green algae, and also the silicates that really grow algae fast. Now, if you look down here, you'll notice that their products that they have down here, they're all good, but PhosGuard is the only one that's a non-GFO. So if you look at PhosBond as a GFO, PhosNet's a GFO, I use PhosBond, I keep it here. Because once in a while, your phosphates can get kind of crazy. And especially if you're using frozen food, and there's a lot of phosphate in frozen food because of the way they ship it and the way they package and keep it purified so it won't go bad. And if you start seeing those phosphates climb, the best way to do it, and this PhosBond is a good product, I use it, is to use PhosBond in there, and it takes it out very quickly. The reason why we don't always use it, and we're going to talk in the line of corals right now, is that it does take trace elements out of the water. So it's very powerful. It does absorb those metals, and it does take trace elements out of the water. And you need some zinc, you need some aluminum, you need some just all that stuff, strontium. And when you start stripping the water of it with a very powerful GFO, you're taking out of the water what your corals and some inverts even need in order to survive and to propagate. So we're going to use PhosGuard because it's a great product and it doesn't have a GFO. If we need a GFO later on, we'll go ahead and look at PhosBond or one of the other products that they have that remove a little more aggressively these metals from the water. Now, once this runs out, the PhosGuard, you don't really want to replace it when your phosphates get down to maybe 0.1 or 0.05, somewhere around that when you're testing it, but we're going to replace it with matrix carbon. Matrix carbon is a wonderful carbon product because it doesn't do what the other carbon products do. It's not that crusty, shale-looking, powdery carbon that dirties up your water. It goes bad. Usually it's used up within a week or so, very quickly. Matrix carbon is spherical. It's highly efficient. It doesn't mess with your pH. It has little effect on it. And it's great at lowering in leachable phosphates. So when it absorbs stuff, it doesn't leach it back out into the water, whether it's phosphates, whether it's other poisons in the water, whether contaminants in the water. It does a great job of absorbing them and not letting them go back out into the water as it gets older. It also lasts a lot longer. So if you look at like marine land and a lot of those other carbons, every week you have to change it, get rid of it, or it'll actually leach poison back into your tank. Matrix lasts about a month. So once a month I change my matrix out. It doesn't take a whole lot of it, and it keeps the water polished off and crystal clear. So it's a great product to use, and you'll really enjoy it, and it will keep your tank clean and lack of the contaminants that are damaging to the fish and to livestock in your tank. So we're really doing good now. So at this point in time, you should have a nice, well-established tank. I'm going to put that back on the matrix. Nice established tank, and you're changing your water once a week, 10% water change. And you have to remember, let me go back to the sea salt here. When your numbers, just before you do your water change, your numbers should look like this. So if you do your water change on Fridays and Thursdays you test your water, all this should be pretty close. Your pH isn't going to change that much. If you use plenty of substrate, we just talked about that, your alkalinity, your calcium, and your magnesium should be pretty close to these numbers the day before you do your water change. And I say that because once your tank starts to uptake these ions, you may need to start dosing. And that's when coralline algae starts to grow in your tank, and on your rocks, that's that purple and pink scaling coral kind of surface. It's a hard surface, and it's actually a living rock, and it will grow in your tank, and it will start to kind of put a layer of that pink and purple scale over all your rock surfaces, your pump filters, your just about everything. It can be annoying after a while, but it does absorb calcium and magnesium. If you've added corals or even some softies, you may start having an uptake in calcium and magnesium, so you're going to have to replenish it. So when you get to that point, we're going to start using a product that Seachem makes called ReefFusion. ReefFusion is a 2-part dosing system. It has alkalinity and trace elements, some trace elements in one bottle, and it has calcium and the opposing trace elements in the other bottle. So you don't want to dose them at the same time. You want to have some time between them, an hour or two, or dose one in the morning, one at night. If you're using a manual process, one in the morning when you get up, one at night before you go to bed is an easy way to do it. If you're dosing with the doser, make sure that you set your timer on the doser to schedule them about maybe 2 hours apart when it's dosing. One thing to remember is that they are a ratio 1-to-1. So you use 1 cap of one cap of the other, 2 of one, 2 of the other. You could also, if you see your alkalinity start to go up or down and you need to adjust it, you could add a little more, a little less if you need to balance out calcium and alkalinity if they start going up or down beyond the scope of where you want them. Another thing to note with Fusion is that if you forget to dose, do not double up your dose the next time you give it its dose the next day. Just continue on your normal regimen. So you want to have nice stability and balance in what you're doing and everything in a reef tank. Now at this point in time, we've probably added corals, we probably added maybe some softies, and you'll see that alkalinity, and let me just go back to our vibrant reef salt. We want to make sure that our dosing of Fusion 1 and 2 brings our numbers every week to this. We don't want to go over or under these numbers. We want to make sure that our alkalinity, our calcium, and our magnesium the day before we do a water change is coming in pretty close to what the salt says on the salt label. So the dosing isn't replacing what the salt does, it's only fortifying and building back up what's being absorbed from the salt in the water column from our reef's inhabitants, whether it's coral, whether it's coralline algae, whatever it is. So we want to be careful not to overdose and try to get out on our own, and that goes with any reefing. If you're using a specific salt, when you're testing your water the day before you do your water change, your numbers should come within line of what the salt has as its fortified ions. Whether it's magnesium, calcium, whatever it is, alkalinity, your salt should match what you're testing. And your dosing should only maintain that level that it says on the bag of salt that you're using. You're going to end up with some weird equilibrium problems if you're dosing beyond or under what the salt is and you're trying to get everything to level up, and you'll notice your alkalinity keeps going up or down, your calcium goes up and down, magnesium, it could get kind of crazy. So every week you should be maintaining the same levels in your tank that were first set up on our baseline. The salt that we put in the tank is telling us on that bag or on that bucket of salt that we're using. Very important. So they're all great products. One other thing I wanted to say, there is a product called Reef Buffer, and I've seen this come up quite a few times, 8.3. This is a good product in an emergency. It's a good product if you just have fish and no corals. And it will keep your water around 8.3, no problem, right on the money. Some people put it in their auto top off system, some people add it to their top off water. The problem is that if you have corals and you're using this replaces products that the corals need in order to grow a strong skeleton. There are chemical processes going on that include the calcifying of calcium. Rather than getting into a lot of science of it, and I really don't want to do that because I can, I'm not a scientist. I just know from personal experience and things that I've read on the internet and I've seen other reefers do, is that when you use buffer, you're replacing in the water or supplementing in the water and stopping a natural process, a chemical process of carbonic acid being formed, that carbonic acid that breaks down carbon and calcium so that it can be used by the skeleton of the corals in order to get a strong growing skeleton and to expand out, and it does more damage than good. So having plenty of substrate, doing your water changes, making sure that these numbers that you're looking at right now that are on your salt are coming up every week nice and even and balanced is going to prevent you from having to use a product like Reef Buffer. Again, if you just have fish, use it. It's just fine. Fish don't care. But if you have hard stony corals, if you have polys, if you have soft corals and stuff, this is probably going to impede in the long term the use of this, the growth of those, and the health of the tank. In an emergency, you know, if the electric goes out and your pH starts to drop like a rock, it's better to use this than not to. However, it should be followed up by a lot of water changes to get this buffer out of the water and replace it with the natural ions, what we see on our screen right now, that our corals need in order to naturally maintain that higher pH. And if you do it right, you don't have to worry about buffers. So just a nice quick note on this. There's also a product that Seachem makes called zeolite. I keep this on hand. Once in a while, you're going to get some metal that leaches into your tank, or you're going to get a bag of bad salt. I've never gotten it bad with Vibrant because it's a synthetic salt, but folks that are actually mining salt and using the natural salt, which is fine, the process itself, or sometimes in packaging and shipping, or it's sitting on a shelf too long, can get different types of metals built up in it, aluminum, iron, or you're using metal clamps somewhere around on one of your water hoses. And on a salt tank, it'll start to rust, even stainless steel, and it'll leach into your water. So zeolite is a great way to get impurities out, to get heavy metals out of the water, and even to treat well water or city water. You know, if you're using that, using zeolite will help keep those heavy metals out. Great product. It is a GFO. And it does a great job of removing heavy metals and other contaminants from the water. So one other note, just quick, if you get into corals and you do, you want to get into the stonies and everything, we all do. Seachem also makes a great dip. I use this for just about everything that I add to my tank. Not fish, not inverts, not snails, not shrimp, just corals. And it's good to kill any critters, any hitchhikers that come on. It kills bacteria. It's iodine, so if there's any infection, anything like that, it could help very much. And it's always a good idea to use that before you add any kind of corals into your fish tank. A quick heads up too, if you live in Florida, Southwest Florida, around Fort Myers, Boardroom Aquariums has a full line of Seachem and all their products right there on the shelf. He's got great prices. Mark owns the place. His fish are very healthy. His corals, very healthy. No aptasia, no critters. And matter of fact, you could probably buy from him in his store locally cheaper than you could buy on the internet, even with free shipping. So it's a good idea if you can to get in there. It's just a hop right off the interstate, and he has a great product. So big shout out to Boardroom Aquariums. I get all my stuff from them, and I never have any issues. So we hope to see you again. We appreciate you tuning into our YouTube channel, our Facebook page. We also have a website, FishyFins.com. And if we can be of any help, let us know. We do trade shows for quite a few of the manufacturers. And so we'll probably see you at one of the coral or the product trade shows. And glad to answer any questions. So again, thanks for joining us. You guys have a wonderful day. FishyFins saying goodbye. We'll see you in your reef tanks.